Okay, sorry about that. Going back to it. Um, so I was thinking about how I forget what I was saying before that, but yeah, some guy was asking me about something. Um, the ignorance of America is it has to do with a lot with lot less with like this idea, because it's like at some point, like, and let's just understand this. Um, I think there's problems on both sides, and I'm not here to choose a side. I think both sides need to address their nonsense before they actually come together, um, because, like it said, like for instance, for me, I think a person who should judge is someone who's perfect. He's either perfect, a person who in whom the judgment falls under. They are not they're not under that same judgment. They're not guilty of that same judgment, because that's you'd be under hypocrisy if you were. Um, Sorry, okay, doing a check. So, given that, I think we need to understand that Christianity was used at the time was for control, and that's sad because we want to try to today spin it and say, well, people actually cared about slavery and the abolition, and that wasn't the truth. But that was before they thought about slavery as a secondary priority. Because let's also understand that Benjamin Franklin had his prejudice towards slaves and believed that if we became free, it would eventually cause an inevitable civil war. Even though he believed that slavery was wrong, it was a violation of human rights. Another thing, just like Abraham Lincoln, they didn't really care about slaves. They were just pro-union. You know, other people were pro-union. They wanted the nation to be unified. And so slavery was kind of like we'll get to it when we get to it. But it wasn't like that some countries were trying to get rid of slavery. It was just that they cared more about the unification of the country at the time. So given that, America is it's especially at a state of ignorance, and it's on both parties, is that we can't come to this understanding that one person needs to change or the other one needs to change until we look at ourselves. And that's probably the better thing that we need to do. Another thing is that ignorance dies. For me, ignorance dies with knowledge, and that's going to be coming from the historical standpoint, from the personal standpoint, from the societal standpoint, from the classist standpoint, from multiple levels. But that's one of those things that's just going to have to be addressed one step at a time, and just going to have to need ears to hear. And so, given that, I think we need to come to terms with our identity as people before we identify ourselves as Americans, because we can't assume that we're American, because what is that? What is that, especially today? We're trying so hard, and we have people inside the legislation to push their own personal agenda of what they believe is right. But no one really has this understanding of what it means to actually be an American. Like we say, it's about freedom. But who's free? Who was free? And in what capacity are we free? So we have to come to this understanding that if we are free, what does that mean for other people? If other people are free, yet they say they're not free, why? Why do they believe so? So coming to this understanding, we have to grow in our knowledge and actually be humble and asking questions. Again, I'm a big fan of Trevor Noah, despite him, he's born after South African, but he lives here, from what I understand. He's part of, what is that, the late night show? Took it from Stephen Colbert, and I believe, could be wrong, I think that's a Jewish name, could be a French name, not sure. But could I call Trevor Noah Stephen Colbert's protege? Perhaps. And so given that, he has an outsider's perspective, but because he's been a part of apartheid, he's like a child of apartheid. Well, not a child of apartheid, but a child of the era, of a person in the era living in apartheid. So he's like a child within it and post it. And so taking into account this, He has a very unique perspective in looking and saying, hey, this might be why they're feeling this way, and hey, this is probably why they don't get it, why the other persons don't get it. So take into account, he's able to see it uniquely where both parties are at and why both parties need to understand. Lastly, there's this weird sentiment. It's a weird sentiment in America that if you don't agree with us, you're against us. And this isn't just like for the Liberal Party. This is for the Conservative Party as well. It's the strangest thing to me because the Conservative Party preaches itself to be Christ-centric, but it's one of those things that, like, if you're in the church, there's many themes of forgiveness and humility and understanding and humbling yourself under authority. And I guess that's where it comes from. It's just humbling yourself under authority and understanding what does that mean, or at least being under service. And I guess that's associated with the historical ties as well, which is like not being afraid of authority or not trusting authority and having reasons to trust authority. But for a different culture such as my own, it's not really a place where we can trust authority. It's like childhood trauma almost. If you've been on, if someone's, and I suggest you just take a look at somebody like Katie Morton, and you check out her episode on childhood trauma. She's with someone else. I can't remember her name, can't remember her profession, but I believe she's a fellow professional of hers within that counseling psychology camp, and they talk about the effects of childhood trauma, and also how these places of trauma can be transferred over from generation to generation if they aren't taken care of. In the Bible, we understood these things to be generational curses, and so given that, it would be better for us to understand that generational trauma is not only a black issue, but it's a white issue as well. Another thing I really do want to point out is, regardless if you were born to a racist or not, racism is not going to particularly affect you. It's not. Even if you're growing up. I remember this guy, he's from the Duck Dynasty. He was the older guy. He was the older guy, probably hyper conservative and stuff. He was like, we need to go back to the days of where we loved and trusted God. And he said that slaves were nice. They didn't mind working, and I think he was wrong. I think who wants to be a slave? Of course you make the best of your situation, but who wants to be a slave and a freedman? If you had the choice between slave, freedman, you'd be like, I'd want to be a freedman, And so, given the time, he was a child at the time, Who's gonna sit here and blast at a child saying I hate slavery and stuff? I'm sorry, if it seemed happy to you, you were a child back then. Who's gonna sit here and vent their problems to you? People they're smart. They deal with kids. They deal with people accordingly. So, of course, I'm not gonna tell you how bad slavery is, or just make you their burden of their problems. But that was an old place, old aspect. I just think it came from ignorance. But you can't just say, back in my day, they didn't seem so bad. It was just like, to me, that's ignorant. Because it's like, if people smile in front of your face, yet they're dying inside, that's not going to take assumptions. That, especially at the young, tender age, they're probably, it would take a good amount of research to say, how did they feel? Not how do we feel, how did they feel? And that takes humility. So, I don't know, I guess, again, ignorance to me dies with knowledge, and it's like understanding where that comes from. Where does intelligence? Where can we start? Where are we willing to start? I remember Jordan B. Peterson. He spoke about change, and then talking about it. He said about partners, and he says if you want someone to change, ask them to do the bare minimum. Talk to them and ask them what you would want to change, and ask for the bare minimum. So I think, before we start asking for heavy things, maybe like reparations, we should ask for very small things, And of course we may say we're already doing it. I don't think so. I don't think so. Here's the reason why. Movie changes, movie actress switches and gender things and stuff like that, even though if you take into account the real world and, you know, discrimination and stuff like that, that's not really a give, a dig saying, hey, we gave you this, we gave you that. It's like, no, you didn't. The filmmakers gave us this in assumption of the target audience. Who gave? I keep thinking this because I keep saying maybe we need to come to an understanding of having this, having a talk, having a cultural talk with amongst ourselves, and saying, here, let's discuss, let's reason together and see what's going on. Not just sit here fumigating and just getting upset and saying they need to do this, they need to do that, you know. And it's just like with problem relationships with other people, with toxic parents, etc., etc., etc. And I'm sure, like, again, I'm a big fan of like counseling and therapy and stuff like that, because they help provide a space where you can actually vent your problems and come up with solutions, not just vent your problems and feel good and move on and still be angry and upset. And so I would definitely love a multicultural arena where we can discuss these things, because it's like we need to. I think we really need to. I understand that, like, you know, we can't just be upset. We need to actually come up with a solution and stuff like that. And to know, not just point out other people's faults, because there are other people's faults, let's be honest about that, but what about ourselves, you know? And so that's what I got. In order to kill the ignorance, you gotta attack it competently, attack it with competence, with intelligence, with smarts, wisdom, knowledge, understanding, and move forward from there. You know, it's not like whites don't have a legacy, and I'm not talking about the whites who have immigrated. I'm talking about the whites who are Americans who have aided in slavery, who were for slavery, who support items and trinkets and symbols and things that are in regards to slavery. You know, these things, these are people and insignias and signs of oppression that still lead to trauma. And we need to not make peace with them just yet, but we need to have a conversation, and we need to have a expression of trauma. Just say, hey, this stuff hurts. This stuff hurt me. You know, and to talk about these topics, not just say that white people are the problem, but dig deep and not just for us, but just to research and say, okay, if all this stuff is true, let's put it on the table. And let's put this on the table. Let's not just point fingers, but to talk and to say, is this true? Do you guys know about it? If you guys did know about it, why didn't you do anything? You know, or, you know, just ask questions, important questions. You know, if they say, well, I'm sorry, I was just worried about my family and stuff, then that's their answer. You know, and it's just like I don't think we're going to get anywhere if we just keep pointing fingers. You know, we need to start tackling this smart and with competence and intelligence. So that's what I got. American Ignorance Part 2. I don't know, I guess that's a little on the nose, but just engage in this in a competent fashion. So that's all I got. Alright guys, I'll see you later.